Hey everyone, welcome back to In Her Wallet, a weekly podcast helping women around the world take control of their finances for good and build better financial futures one episode at a time. My name is Sofiia. I am the host of In Her Wallet podcast, creator behind In Her Wallet, and an accredited investment representative here in Canada. Today we're talking about one of my most favorite topics, which is doing goal setting and mid-year resets. The reason why I thought now would be a great time to have this conversation is because we are heading into fall. So that normally feels like the right time when we're switching seasons to refocus. We only have 4 months left in this year. So next thing you know, you're going to be choosing Halloween costumes and then buying Christmas gifts. And 2024 is here. Time flies with a blink of an eye. I have an amazing guest joining me today, Ashley Meadahl. She is a business coach, a top charting podcast host, and a speaker. Ashley is also the creator behind Glow Getter Conference. This conference is coming back this year, and the headliner she's got is none other than Jenna Kutcher. If you like this conversation and what Ashley is sharing, make sure to check out the resources she shared with us in the episode description, including the Glow Getter Conference tickets. There is a special code buy in her wallet for you guys. Also, if you like this episode and if you want to support the show, there are several ways to do that, either by leaving us a 5-star review, by sharing this episode on social media with your family and friends. Obviously, it helps us reach new audiences and grow. Or you can also support us through Buy Me a Coffee, link in the episode description. Well, I think now we're ready to head into the episode. Ashley, welcome to In Her Wallet podcast. I'm excited to have you on, and I'm excited to talk about goal setting.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait as well.
We were saying right before we started recording how we are coordinated in our colors today. We both have blonde hair. So this right away from the start feels like a perfect match. So I'm very excited.
Me too.
Before we dive in, let's do a little bit of an icebreaker so our community can get to know you better. Tell me, what's your go-to coffee order?
Okay, so I don't actually drink coffee. I am a tea girl. So I am a Tim Hortons fan through and through. I've grown up with Tim Hortons around me, and I have always loved an Earl Grey tea with half a shot of milk.
Nice. I have
Yeah.
been lately a big fan of cream Earl Grey from David's
Ooh.
Tea. Try it. It's
Mm-hmm.
so good.
I have heard David's tea is very good too. I love it.
What's the movie you can rewatch again and again? Do you have one?
Okay, so I was thinking about this and I had to kind of laugh because it's probably going to be so unexpected. I mean, I could watch ones that like I love dancing, so I would say like there's Dirty Dancing in Greece I would watch over and over, but one of my like true favorites is the Jurassic Park series. It's so random, but I love it. I've loved it as like since a kid with my brothers. I grew up with brothers and we all love Jurassic Park.
Love it. Nice. And Ashley, if you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
Uh, I have been thinking a lot about Italy and Bali, but I've also been thinking about the Bahamas. So once my conference is over this year, I've been really thinking about a tropical beach vacation somewhere like the Bahamas.
It will be well deserved. It will be well
Thank you.
deserved. So now that you've touched on the conference, for those folks who have not heard of you, who don't know who Ashley is, can you give us a bit of an intro about who you are and what you do?
Yes, for sure. Okay, so I'll share a bit about what I do right now, and then whenever you'd like, I can always take it back to the journey that's got me to this point. But right now I am a business and Instagram coach along with podcaster and host of the Glow Getter Conference. So it's been a wild journey getting here, but the conference is coming back, first time since the pandemic. So I'm very excited to be bringing back that this fall.
We cannot skip this part. I want to highlight who the keynote speaker is for this year's conference.
Yes, for sure. So, do you mind if I tell the story about how it all came to be? Because it's kind of
Yes, let's
interesting.
do it.
Okay, so just to take it back a little bit, what was so interesting about this is at the beginning of the year, I was working with a client of mine that worked with a Jasper Park Lodge, the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. And I saw this beautiful facility I've been working with for a few years. And I said out loud, this was like the funniest thing, I said out loud, I can't wait to bring my conference back one day once things kind of settled down with in-person events. And I would just love to do it in somewhere like this, where the property is just so stunning, so beautiful, but it's also secluded. And it's a way that business owners, entrepreneurs, us women who wear multiple hats all the time could get away and focus solely on their business. So I started daydreaming while I was there. So in March of this year, I started thinking about it, and I had approached the person that I worked with at the Fairmont and said, I hope to, bring this back. I would love to do it here. Can you tell me what that looks like? I'm not looking anytime soon. This is like a 1 day goal. So this is something that will come up, we'll talk about later and 1 day goals. But it was a 1 day goal of mine to bring it back. So maybe like 2024, 2025. And so she said, sure, no problem. I'll get you some information. I said, that would be great. She's like, do you know who your keynote speaker would be? And I said, no, I have no idea right now. I know who like my big 1 day goals are. I know who are these like major speakers that I absolutely would love to see and bring in. But right now they're just 1 day goals. So a week later, I woke up, and I always joke about this because I am not a super early morning person. Like, I am a night owl. I get way more done at night. And so I woke up one morning a week later at 5 a.m. It's so funny for me. And my mind was just instantly, as soon as I woke up, was, well, who would I bring in if I did this event? Who would that be? And so I laugh because I'm sitting there brainstorming going, I know who my 1 day, speakers would be, like somebody like Jenna Kutcher, Amy Porterfield, Mel Robbins. And I've got all these incredible women's names. And one thing that I will say is, during creating my podcast, I always listen to the Jenna Kutcher's Gold Digger podcast. Her podcast is such a trailblazing podcast for us entrepreneurs. She was one of the first that really created something so magical for entrepreneurs. And so I was always such a fan. She was a huge inspiration of me creating my podcast, in my business, what I was doing. And so I remember thinking, I wonder what it would look like to work with her one day. I think I'm just going to reach out and get some information and see what it would look like, so I can plan for one day when I have that opportunity to potentially work with her. So I sent a message off at 5 a.m. that morning to her team. And I just said, I would just love some more information. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm going, I'll probably not hear back. If I do, it may not be something that's possible right now, but at least I'll know. And so 2 days later, I heard back from her team, and they said, I actually think Jenna would love this. Can you send us some more information about your event? And I was like, oh, oh, this is getting real. So then I spent all weekend preparing all of the details about what my mission and what my vision was, to create this conference again and bring it back, and who I wanted to impact, and how I wanted to change lives with it, and how I wanted to help women show that they can turn 1 day goals into today goals. And so I spent the whole weekend writing this massive response, detailing everything about the event that I wanted to create, what I've done in the past, all the things. And Monday morning, I sent the details off. 2 hours later, I heard back from Jenna herself, and she personally sent me a message saying she absolutely loved what I was doing and would love to be a part of it. So, officially announcing, the amazing Jenna Kutcher is coming to Alberta, Canada this fall.
I am so excited for you. And Ashley, I mean, this is quite a story, from recognizing an opportunity back in 2014 to bringing it to life, to adapting during the pandemic, to now bringing Jenna Kutcher to your conference. Just because you woke up at 5 a.m. and had that thought and literally manifested it.
Yep.
I love this. And that is the reason why I thought you would be the perfect speaker to bring onto the In Her Wallet podcast and talk about mid-year resets and goal setting. Throughout the story, you did mention about those 1 day goals. So I'm already excited. I cannot wait to dive into that. Now, I think if we look at mid-year resets from your perspective, what
Yep.
are those and what are they designed to achieve?
Doing like a mid-year reset to me is something like, having a distraction-free time where you can dedicate. You don't have to, but something I love doing is going away. Like, I love going to the mountains, booking like a hotel there, just booking a room and just having time away, distraction-free, to focus on my goals. So when I do a mid-year reset, what I would do is I really evaluate what I've accomplished and achieved so far. And there's two parts to it. I always look at what accomplishments I've had, and so far in the year, when I think of accomplishments, I don't think just massive accomplishments. I think of all the small wins as well. There's so many different things that we go through and achieve. And I think often as entrepreneurs, we're goal setters and we're often checking off one goal and on to the next. And we forget to acknowledge what we have done. So when I work with my clients, I really make sure they go back through their calendar and they share with me what wins they've had, big and small, because they all matter. They're all really important. And for us to also recognize that we have worked really hard and things have happened. We have achieved things. So that's where it's really important to do a good evaluation of what has happened so far and then decide what you want from the rest of the year. So this again is what I notice a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck doing the work and not working on the business. And so when you do a mid-year reset, look at what you really want to accomplish over the next, say, 6 months. So when this comes out, it'll probably be more like 4 months left of this
Formal.
year. And right. And I mean, it seems crazy to say this year has flown by, but what I want you to think about is what is it that you really want to do? So what I want you to think of right now, if you were to close your eyes and you were to picture that it's December 31st, 2023, it's the end of the year, you remember thinking back to that mid-year reset and you set some goals. What is it that now you're at December 31st that you achieved and you are so excited to say you achieved? So, what is it that you want to accomplish over these next 4 months? And how can you prioritize that? Right? How can you make sure that that's something you're constantly revisiting? So, in this new journal that I'm creating for 1 day goals, that's really something that I make sure is a daily practice in my journaling sessions that I am constantly revisiting. This is not something I do once a month to look at my goals. I look at them every single day. So maybe you aren't familiar or you don't enjoy, say, journaling, but maybe there's a way that when you do a mid-year reset and you pick your priorities and the goals you want to achieve for the rest of the year, you can put it somewhere that you can see it visually. So for example, I have a collage of my goals for the rest of the year. I do this at my mid-year reset is I always update my vision board and I have a virtual one that I put on the back of my computer screen. So like on my desktop, I see
Mhm.
every day I log in and look at my computer, I'm looking at my goals and reminding myself what I'm working towards. And I'm
I have
not
the
picking
same
like
thing.
20 goals. Like I want to be really clear. It's not about being like, oh, I have like 100 things I want to accomplish in the next, like get really crystal clear on like five or less, like ideally two or three, because it's going to be easier to focus in on, right? But if you try to spread yourself too thin, it's just like when you try to do anything a lot at once, you're going to just maybe do things mediocre or good. You're not going to do anything great or excellent. So really focus in on as much as you can on, say, maybe 2 to 3 things. For me, I have 5, but they all work together. So there's ones that build into each other. So that's what I would say when it comes to the mid-year resets.
I really like that you zoned in towards the end on getting crystal clear on just a few things. I personally have
Mhm.
never done a mid-year reset. So as you were talking, I got so excited when you said, imagine it's December 31st. What would you be
Right.
really proud you achieved? But
Yes.
also, if I were to sit down right now, I would probably define 3 key areas I want to focus on, such as financial habits,
Hmm.
health routines, and
Yep.
personal development. And I would just make sure that I work on those 3 areas for the
Hmm.
next 4 months. Like breaking it down probably in these key areas would be less overwhelming. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And one thing that I've actually been working with my clients in my accelerator program right now is building habits where we start small. So it doesn't mean like when you look at these, say you pick 2 big goals that you're going to focus on for the next couple of months, the next 4 months, or like you said, three, like those 3 different areas. So when you look at those 3 different areas, if it's financial, if it's health, pick something that is a small step that you can take every single day. So, for example, in the accelerator group I'm doing, one of the areas that one of the clients wanted to work on was in her health area. And so it was just moving her body daily. So she said, okay, I really want to just do more squats as an example. This is one step of one thing I can take action on every single day. So I said, okay, start small. This does not mean go and try to aim for a 60-minute workout every day if this is not something you're doing already. That's going to feel very overwhelming and like a lot. And then sometimes we talk ourselves out of that, right? So what I
Yes.
did is start with 1 minute. Anybody can do anything for 1 minute. So, whatever it is that you're looking at working towards, if it's a health goal, if it's a financial goal, let's say financial. So, maybe you have an income goal that you're working towards. Okay, so write down a few different of your money making activities. So, money generating activities that you can do in your business and pick one a day to work on. So, just start
Mhm.
small, right? And work on it for
Mhm.
1 minute. It's going to be really simple. I often say to myself, I just need to go on the treadmill for 5 minutes. And I also give myself full permission at 5 minutes to stop. If I don't feel like continuing once I'm on there, then I will stop. How often does that happen? Probably not very often. I usually get on there and I feel good once I'm on there. But it's the mindset of
Exactly.
even getting ourselves to that point. So if you can say, I can do anything for 1 minute, that is just what begins the habit and you can work from there. But it's just so easy to get overwhelmed when we're building any kind of habits, working towards any kind of goal, that we often talk ourselves out of it.
Yes, I agree with you. Ashley, now, I mean, if we laser focus our attention on goal reviews, how does that goal review process happen normally? And how do we almost modify or update goals for the rest of the year if they're not relatable or timely anymore?
Right. Okay. So when it comes to goal review, something that you can do, a lot of people do, is use something like a habit tracker, right? So if you're working toward a specific goal and it's something that you have to take action on every single day, track what you're doing and don't feel bad if there is a day that you don't do it. So one thing I want to remind people is that we're human, we're not perfect. Things are going to happen. There's going to be days that we don't feel good, or, like there's just going to be different scenarios that, something may have come up. So don't feel bad if something doesn't happen one day and you're upset with yourself, because I think, say in the health goal kind of area, if we don't work out for one day, we feel like we've fallen off the wagon, then we often get discouraged and then don't want to do it or don't want to continue. So one thing I want to remind yourself is, when you're working on those goals and you're working through evaluating, pick yourself back up. If you miss a day, that's okay. Every day is one step at a time. So when you're going through those goal reviews, what I do when I set a goal is I usually try to break it down into like 3 steps. So it could be 3 different ways that you can take action towards building that goal. And so it doesn't mean that you have to do those 3 things every single day, but it's just 3 ways to understand how you're going to step up and achieve that goal. So the next thing I do when it comes to goal evaluation, and especially when you get closer to, say, the end of the year, is every time I achieve a goal, big or small, one of the things I love to do is come back to having a visual. So something that I actually keep on my vision board, which it's hard to see, but it's the big one on my wall, is I actually have my vision board split in half. So on the left side of my vision board is actually all the things that I've achieved over time that I'm really proud of. And on the right hand side are all my goals. And the reason I did this and combined the two is because I want to look up and go, okay, some of these goals might be big, scary goals, but I've also can look on the other side and say, I've actually achieved some really big, scary goals too. And I've also had some, smaller wins that feel amazing as well. So for me, it's that visual combined, right? Reminding myself I can do anything I set my mind to. And then I look at what I'm working towards. So when you're thinking of all those things and you're doing, even if it's a monthly review along the way, take time to acknowledge those wins, big or small, and what you have achieved. And if you can, get visuals of it.
I haven't heard of people splitting their vision board into two halves. I mean,
Right?
that's such a smart approach. Reminding yourself of what you've already achieved, like just looking at it, is
Yep.
additional motivation, additional confidence that you can like right
Yes.
away give to yourself. Actually,
Exactly.
taking a step back, if
Mhm.
you are at a point where you realize, it's end of August, we have 4 months left,
Mhm.
but you haven't
Mhm.
really hit those goals you've set for yourself that you thought you would by this
Mhm.
time of the year,
Yep.
how to approach that mentality and mindset, and how
Mhm.
to really push yourself to get back on track and make sure you finish strong.
Definitely. I think there are a few different ways to look at this. And I've definitely experienced it before as well, where the goals maybe haven't happened as quickly as I expected or hoped. I see that in clients as well, where they set goals and maybe they haven't achieved them. When it comes to the evaluation part of that, I want you to, first of all, give yourself grace through all of this. Again, we're human, we're not perfect. We also have a lot of moving parts. If we're entrepreneurs, we're, in our careers, often there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world in general. So often we, even as women, tend to wear a lot of hats in a lot of different areas. And we then put all this pressure on ourselves that we should be doing all the things at all the time. And I always love that meme that's online that's like, today I drank all my water and I worked out and I did all the things that I was supposed to. And I took care of my family and I, right, I moved my body and I made dinner and all the things. And it's just such a good reminder that we often put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get everything done in a timeline. And I am really good for this, where I put a timeline on myself and then have all these expectations. And then if I don't meet it, then I'm upset with myself because I didn't meet it. And meanwhile, it was just me putting that timeline on myself. So when it comes to maybe some goals that you haven't achieved, and just maybe even sit down and take a few minutes and journal what happened, what maybe came up. And most often what I notice in this is that there was just other priorities at that time. And it's okay to have other priorities. And it's okay that if a goal doesn't fit into your priorities right now, again, come back to giving yourself grace. And maybe, like I said, journal out what did happen so you can go back and recognize, because I think we get hard on ourselves when we didn't accomplish something. And then we often forget, like, oh, like maybe something happened where there was emergency in the family, or there was, like, I mean, look at what's happening right now in like Kelowna and the Northwest Territories. And, some business owners right now might be feeling like, oh, there goes, what I was hoping to do over these past few weeks of summer. And again, just come back and give yourself grace, because sometimes a lot of those types of situations are out of our control. And so what I try to do is just try to do that reset. This doesn't have to be a mid-year reset, but it can just be at any time. Reset on what that priority is and look forward. Look forward on those goals and what you can work on moving forward. Give yourself grace and forgiveness of what has happened in the past, and then just continue looking forward. Don't get stuck in what has already happened.
I think another great tip we can mention here is that because we live in an ever changing environment, evaluating if
Mhm.
that goal is even relevant at all still. Maybe
Exactly.
you want to set some new goals for yourself and that is not a
Yeah,
priority for you any longer. Just keeping that
exactly.
in mind. Ashley, one more thing I wanted to actually highlight. I keep seeing this challenges on TikTok or on Instagram that people post, oh, I'm doing a challenge of resetting my life in like 30 days or in 15
Hmm.
days. I'm doing a challenge of improving my financial habits. Have you
Hmm.
done this before? Are there any you can recommend to our listeners?
Yes. So one that I have done quite a bit is, especially with my clients, is getting used to showing up consistently on social media, for example. And I think one of the biggest things that you see a lot out there, and of course, as social media grew as a marketing tool for business owners, for example, that what I noticed is that everybody starts saying, well, you just have to be on there every day. You have to show up. You have to be making sure you're posting all the time. And what I noticed from that was then a lot of people started getting really overwhelmed, right? There was just so much. It's so easy to get overwhelmed, and especially when you're looking at what other people are doing all the time. So it doesn't even have to be business. Like you said, it could be a health challenge. And I think what happens is we often get on there, we look at what everybody else is doing, and then we often feel bad about ourselves and what we're not doing and wishing that we were. And so what I would do is I always try to encourage women to really not look at what everybody else is doing. You might find inspiration in that way. You might find something that excites you and lights you up, but also don't let it get you down. Don't veer off and go into somebody else's lane. More so stay in your own lane and really pick what it is important to you. Like you were saying, what priorities are, right? What's most important. So maybe health is one of your biggest priorities right now. So find something that feels good for you, not something that makes you feel bad about yourself when you're looking at, right? If it's financial, again, like picking those habits, find something that feels really good for you, a goal that feels realistic. I always have fun when setting goals, where I always say, what's a realistic goal and what's what I call a unicorn goal. And a unicorn goal usually means you're kind of pushing yourself a little bit more than you would. I love challenging my clients to unicorn goals, because sometimes we also create what we feel like is the only thing we can do and we limit ourselves. So if we have a unicorn goal, it's usually somebody that just kind of pushes us a little bit more, that understands what our potential is, and we may not see that in ourselves. But what I would say is, when it comes to seeing what is out there, find something again that is your priority, and really utilize what you see as motivation. And if there's anything that's making you feel bad, maybe don't follow that so much right now and really focus in on what your own lane is. And one of my favorite quotes is also, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. And so when you see these goals, you see what people are doing, like those challenges, no matter what kind of area it is, you might be comparing what they've done after 30 days and you're only on day 1. So that might be, right, a lot different there too.
I like that you mentioned that one quote we brought up in the previous episode, which was about how to balance your money and mental well being. The quote
Mhm.
says, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think
Yes.
it applies so well when it comes to goal setting as well. As you
Yes.
mentioned, your chapter 1 is not someone's chapter 20. I like
Exactly.
that perspective. And I
Yes.
think in this whole journey, you just need to make yourself feel good about where
Mhm.
you are and what you're doing. And that doesn't necessarily have to be in achieving big things. Just starting
Mhm.
small and being consistent with, I don't know, getting 10,000 steps a day, drinking
Mhm.
enough water and supplements, reading 20
Yeah.
pages a day, staying consistent on social media if that's what you do,
Mhm.
paying off your credit card on time,
Yeah.
and so on. That will put you in a good mindset about yourself and almost lift you up in achieving other goals. Ashley,
Yes.
are there any final tips and tangible, practical things you want to share with our audience before we move into the final part of the episode?
Definitely. There's one thing that comes to mind for me, and this is something that we kind of mentioned earlier, which is what I call 1 day goals. So, what I will share real quick is the podcast for me when I created mine, it was initially a 1 day goal, just the same as bringing my conference back as a 1 day goal. And what I will share about 1 day goals is I have been building a framework around what happens when we tell ourselves something is a 1 day goal. So when I first started the idea of the podcast, I had just hired a new assistant at the time, and I was really trying to help her understand what was all going through my mind as an entrepreneur so I could explain what I wanted to achieve. And her and I started talking about the idea of the podcast. So I have a sticky note process, and I wrote down on the sticky note 1 day goal, start a podcast. And so we got talking about what that looks like, what I would need to do in order to even start a podcast, getting all the details together. As you know, it's very detailed. There's a lot to learn in the podcast world. But we started writing that down. Well, that someday goal or that 1 day goal turned into what I call a today goal. So 3 months later, I had the podcast up and running because I was doing the research. I was taking time to figure out what I needed to do. So, same as when I started looking at this conference earlier this year. So, my advice for anybody listening, if you have a big goal that you feel like maybe is a year down the road, multiple years, like 5, 10 years down the road, first thing I want you to do is say this goal out loud. So, even if it's just saying, I have a 1 day goal of blank. And then the next thing I want you to do is write it down and share it with somebody that is safe. It doesn't have to be, publicly on social media, even if it's, your mom, your best friend, your sister, your brother, it doesn't matter, your spouse, whoever. Share it with someone that's in a safe space of just saying it out loud. The third thing I want you to do is take some research, just go and do some research, spend some time and just see what it looks like to achieve that goal. Like, what is it going to take to get to that point? So, for me, as an example, when I did the podcast, had that down, I had to figure out what those steps were to take it, what equipment I would need, what that would look like as a schedule, how often I would have to be creating, who I was going to interview, what the mission was. So, a lot of details to that. Same with the conference. When I started looking at what those details were, again, Jenna was a 1 day goal. And then I decided to say it out loud. I decided to write it down as a goal. And then I decided to approach and see what research I needed to do to learn, to understand, to make it happen. And then same with the rest of the conference coming together. I had to do the research of what that would look like. Saying it out loud, again, can be scary, but it's really the next step. And that's really my framework of starting turning 1 day goals into today goals.
So, really, 1 day goal meaning it's not that you're going to achieve it in 1 day, is that it's going to happen 1 day. And then you break that
Exactly.
1 day goal into today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and so
Yes.
on until you get there. I
Yes,
like that.
exactly.
Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. Tell me, what's financial freedom to you, and what's your advice to women to achieve financial freedom? These are the two questions I
Mhm.
ask every guest, and I am very curious to hear your take on it.
I love that. When I think of financial freedom, I think of a few different things. I think of the ability to work remotely and work from anywhere, no matter where I want to go. If that's traveling, I'm originally from Ontario. I live in Alberta now. I go back and forth. When I go back, I have the ability with my business, because of that financial freedom, to work from wherever I go. And to me, that's really important. So that way, it doesn't even mean necessarily going back home, or, you know what I mean? Between Alberta and Ontario could mean I could go anywhere in the world and work remotely and have that financial freedom. So being able to do that is one of the biggest things. The other thing with financial freedom is to be able to live a lifestyle that allows me to do what I want when I want. So nothing that is restricting when you think of maybe even say something like a corporate job where you only have so much say vacation time. With this, I find that I have built financial freedom to have that time flexibility as well.
What do you think women can do, or what's that one day goals they can set for themselves to get there?
Good question. So, I guess it's looking at what feels good for them. For me, it was really evaluating what kind of work I wanted to do. So, for me, it was recognizing that I loved working with entrepreneurs and I was able to build something that was based virtually. So, if that is something that you're looking for, say financial freedom or being able to have that time freedom to be able to travel and work at the same time, it would be looking at something that feels good for you. You don't, of course, want to do work that you don't enjoy just to be able to do it. For me, it's really a win-win where I love what I do, and then I also have built that virtual work. So that's what I would say and suggest is looking at something you enjoy that maybe you could potentially do virtual. And I think because of the pandemic, it opened a lot of doors to have a lot of different opportunities in a lot of different areas to be able to do that.
Ashley, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think this turned out to be such a good conversation. I definitely think it'll be
Mhm.
an impactful one for the In Her Wallet audience.
Thank you so much for having me. That was so much fun.
Thank you all for joining us today. If you like this episode, please make sure to share it with your family and friends, to give us a 5-star review, or to support us through Buy Me a Coffee link in the episode description. All of these things help us reach new audience and grow, which is the biggest thing for me personally, someone who is creating this show from start to finish. Also, make sure to check out the resources linked in the episode description, including tickets to the Glow Getter conference that Ashley shared with us. As always, I want you to give yourself credit for showing up for yourself and your future, because every time you do that, you increase what's financially possible for you. Thank you all, and I will see you next week.